Earlier this month, for like 2 weeks, Donald Trump really cozied up to Laura Loomer. For those of you who don't know who she is a far-right media personality who has self-described herself as things such as a white nationalist, a proud Islamophobe, quote-unquote. In 2019, after the Christchurch shooting, in which 51 people were shot to death in a mosque, she wrote on Telegram, "Nobody cares about Christchurch. I especially don't." She's pushed anti-vax conspiracy theories regarding the COVID vaccine, even after contracting the virus herself, apparently getting it so bad to the point where she was requesting people to pray for her. And I think you get the picture. This woman is an out-and-out piece of shit, but still someone that the former president, who may very well be elected to the presidency again this November, wanted to hang out with. But I guess some of Trump's staffers got into his ear because he has since distanced himself from her, because she has been nothing but a blunder for his campaign. All of her vile viewpoints and comments that I already mentioned and more have resurfaced. It's been widely speculated that it was her that told Trump to go hard on this Haitian migrants eating cats and dogs nonsense. Her appeal begins and ends with hardcore Trump loyalists completely detached from reality. The broader Republican Party isn't actually so fond of her. Marjorie Taylor Greene just recently went to a football game with Trump in Alabama, and Laura Loomer had this to say on Twitter. 15 people have died in Georgia during Hurricane Helene, and the state of Georgia is experiencing massive flooding. Instead of being in Georgia to help the people of her state, MTG blew them off and decided to go to a football game in Alabama yesterday instead. Now, I don't know about you, but I smell a hint of jealousy. Her and Trump are inseparable, just up until like a week and a half ago, because Trump is susceptible to anyone who strokes his ego, and honestly, I think there was a non-0% chance that that wasn't the only thing of Trump's that Laura Loomer was stroking, but let's not get into that because I'd rather not have that image in my head. And here he is now palling around with another female sycophant, and if you think this is high school level bullshit, well, you're not wrong. But this is the level we're at when it comes to prominent right-wing figures. We're not dealing with rational people. Trump himself is not rational. The base he panders to is irrational. Why else would much of his base just willingly believe a conspiracy theory involving Haitian migrants eating cats and dogs based on nothing besides these are black people from a foreign country, so they must be savages? So if the Trump campaign and the GOP broadly doesn't enjoy the company of the likes of Laura Loomer out of fear that people like her tank their chances in November, well, they have no one but themselves to blame for cultivating a base of people just like her. At this point, Trump's campaign is almost exclusively running on fear and hatred of non-white people. Trump's strategy since the beginning of his 2016 campaign has been to tap into the irrationality and bigotry that so many people in this country possess. Because tell me, when you think of someone who is so wrapped up in their bigotry that they're always talking about their hatred of non-white people, their hatred of immigrants, their hatred of LGBT people, do you think of them as some normal, well-adjusted person? No, these are usually some of the nastiest, maladjusted pieces of shit you could ever have the displeasure of meeting. And Laura Loomer falls right into that category. Just earlier this month, she tweeted this: "If Kamala Harris wins, the White House will smell like curry, and the White House speeches will be facilitated via a call center, and the American people will only be able to convey their feedback through a customer satisfaction survey at the end of the call that nobody will understand." Because, haha, Kamala Harris is of half Indian descent, so here are the most obvious negative Indian stereotypes you could imagine. And then Marjorie Taylor Greene quote-tweeted this and wrote, "This is appalling and extremely racist. It does not represent who we are as Republicans or MAGA." Anyway, let me continue reading. "This does not represent President Trump. This type of behavior should not be tolerated ever. Laura Loomer should take this down." 1. Imagine being so racist that even Marjorie Taylor Greene calls you out. 2. No, this is exactly who you are. Marjorie Taylor Greene has always worn her racism, her homophobia, her transphobia, her anti-Semitism, etc. on her sleeve. If your presidential candidate and political party is attracting people in mass whose bigotry flies a little too close to the sun for your comfort, that is indicative of the type of rhetoric your presidential candidate and political party frequently engages in. And now all of a sudden you conveniently don't like the naked bigotry a lot of Trump orbiters and supporters engage in. Because, you know, undecided voters who don't pay attention to every single culture war issue you weirdos hyperfixate on read shit like what Laura Loomer tweeted and think, what the fuck, I don't want to be associated with this shit. But the genie has been out of the bottle for a long time at this point. People like Laura Loomer is the exact crowd of people you, Trump, the GOP broadly, has been facilitating for the last 8 years at this point. So don't whine and cry when even prominent figures on your side of the aisle can't help but rip the mask off. Again, these are not rational people. They are so consumed by their bigotry that they just can't help but talk about how they find certain groups of people subhuman. And they learned it from the face of their political party, Donald Trump, who has never ever wasted an opportunity to demonize minority groups he doesn't like. And now that Laura Loomer has more or less been shunned by the GOP, she's been going on a tirade on Twitter, and I found this tweet in a Kyle Kalinske video I watched the other day. If Republicans keep the House and take back the Senate, it won't be because they deserve it. It will be only because they rode the coattails of Donald Trump. Not a single Republican is happy with the GOP. They have done nothing over the last 4 years, if we are being honest. I say just to let them fight. I love it when the most vile pieces of shit you could imagine are at odds with each other. The GOP is like Dr. Frankenstein now having to deal with the monster that they created. If they lose the presidency this November, of course many of them will shriek, "Election fraud." But their undoing would really be the reprehensible and increasingly extremist rhetoric they have been engaging in these last several years, and the likewise increasingly extremist crowd of people they have been facilitating this entire time. These kinds of extreme bigots don't just appear out of thin air. They gravitate towards whoever and whatever reaffirms their disgusting beliefs, and if the GOP only now sees this as a liability, just barely over a month out from the election, well, they have no one but themselves to blame. Anyway, that's all I have to say. Bye-bye.